Hello class, so today what I'm doing today is working on the scanner example. We're going to go through this and completely figure out how it works and how to do error checking. Because every time we get user input we have to check for them errors. Right, meow. So what I'm doing right now is copying and pasting the code into BlueJ from the scanner file, and here we go. I'm going to compile and run it, and I'm going to see what happens. Okay, we compiled it, no syntax errors, so we're going to go and run the program real quick. And what it's asking for is a name, so I'm going to type in Nate. How many cats? It's asking for a number. I'm going to put in a number. And how much money do I have in my wallet? I'm going to type in another number. And it's going to produce the results as stated. Now what we have to do is we have to make sure that I actually put in a name, I actually put in a number. So I'm going to run the program again, and I'm going to break the program by saying, what's my name? 3. Well, that works because it's a string. How many cats do I have? A, and it's going to give me an error. Now, what we need to do is we need to make sure that that error doesn't happen. So we're going to go into the code, and we're going to look at the code. This first line is just the import statement to make the scanner work. This is just the basic stuff. This creates a scanner object called user input scanner, and we create it in the system.input. We output what is your name, and then we get a string value in for the variable name, and that's the next line. The next one we do is we ask how many cats do we have. So this is just an output. To get the next input, which is the next int, I'm going to assign it to number of cats. And last but not least, I'm going to go system.print how much money is in your wallet, and we're going to get the next double. What we're going to be doing here is we are going to be making rules. So the only one we want is the integer. So when we just have the integer, all we're doing is getting a rule number. So instead of saying how many cats do we have, we want to say print line, and then we want to say please choose one of the following rules. And you can state that any way you want to. It doesn't matter to me. And then we're going to say rule 1 colon, and we're going to do the fencinator. And then rule 2 we're going to call the flipper. So replace A with Z. And then rule 3 we're going to say replace baby with win. So now what we have to do is when we run this, we want to make sure we get a value 1 through 3. So if I type in 4, nothing's going to happen because 4 doesn't work with a program because it's not one of these rules. So what we have to say is in our code, if number of cats, so I'm going to say rule num, if rule num is greater than 3, which this value right here, and if rule num is less than 1. What that means is if my values are not 1, 2, or 3, I want to do something else. Again, I want to say ask again. However, an if won't loop. We have to do a loop in order for this to happen. So we either want to do a do while or a while loop. Yes, we want to do a do while because we want to do first and then, yes, while, instead of if, we're going to make it a while statement while this is happening. And that will ask again. Now when we run this, we're going to find something pretty interesting. We're going to find that rule num does not exist here. It does not exist here because the scope of this variable is only inside this do while loop. Once I go outside the bracket, it does not exist anymore. So what we need to do is we need to declare it up in all of our variable declarations and delete the int part here. Now the scope of this variable is throughout the entire program because it's outside the do while loop and inside the main. Now when we compile and run this, I'm going to say equals 0. I'm going to give it a default value. When I run this, I will get this. And now when I type in 4, it should ask again, but it's not going to. And let's take a look at why. In our code, we're asking, if this is true, ask again. However, when is a number greater than 3 and less than 1? Never. So what we need to do is, if it is greater than 3 or less than 1, ask again. If this is true, we're going to ask again. So when I compile and run this now, I'm going to put in 4. It's going to ask again. I'm going to put in 8, 11, 0, and 77, 1337. And now I'm going to put in 2. And it's going to stop. So we're good there. Now I have the error checking done there. Now, the interesting thing is, say we want to make a custom made rule. Say I want to replace, instead of A with Z, a character, replace a character with a character. What that means is, we're going to keep on looping till I get 2. And now in my code, if rule num equals 2, I want to get another input. I want to say next, instead of int, we want to do char, and I'm pretty sure this will work. However, the thing we need to do here is we need to get a variable to hold this. First char, and then I also need second char. And so what I want to do here is, I want to say, instead of rule num, I want to say first char. And then I want to copy this whole line of code, and I want to say second char. And now for my own benefit, I want to see that this works. I'm going to say 1 plus plus 2 plus. And now I'm going to copy in first char and second char. And now when I run this, this should be interesting. Ooh, next char does not exist. Next string. Next line, I think. And instead of a char, I want to do a string. So now when I run this, I put in 2, and then it's going to be blinking for more input. Now the user doesn't know what input he needs to put in. However, me, the programmer, does. I'm going to put in when, and notice that it automatically takes the next input. That's because we have an error here. In our code, we need to get the next line right up here. I think it is. There is on SchoolFusion a fix to this problem. Right here. When we get a next int and then next line, we need to get a scanner.nextLine. It throws away the /n not consumed by next int. So right up here in my next int, I want to go and I want to change scanner to user input scanner. And now when I compile and run this, it'll work because I took care of that /n. So I have happy and then days. And then 1 is happy, 2 is days. So now my input works using that quick fix posted on SchoolFusion. So now what I need to do is I need to take these values and put them into the replace all function. So I'm going to set up a temp string. String temp equals happy days are good days to frag my students till the sun goes down. Period. Okay, so now what I need to do is I want to run my, now I'm going to put a space there. I want to run my rule on temp. So I'm going to say temp first. I'm just going to output temp so you can see it. And I'm going to go plus turns, in double quotes, turns into, and I'm going to make it really obvious. And then I'm going to output temp.replace all of first char, second char. And now when I run this, why is that? Oh, I don't need the parenthesis. There we go, no compile errors. I'm going to run this, and I'm going to go to, I'm going to go happy with sad. And now happy days are good days to frag my students till the sun goes down, turns into sads because happy is the only thing I'm replacing. If it's happy S, I'm still just replacing that happy part of happies. So sads days are good days to frag my students till the sun goes down. So this is actually pretty interesting because it changes that completely. Now the other one is, if I go through and run this program again, I'm going to go to, and then the rules are going to be DA with da. So happy days are good days to frag my students. So we notice that it works. Now, the errors here are the user doesn't know what to input here. So we need to go into our code, and we need to make it so that the user knows. To make it so that the user knows, we need to tell them. So please enter in the word you want to replace. And then after the first char, I'm going to say, please enter the word that you want it to be. I probably could have used better English on this, but we're just going to let it be. It's good enough for me. So now when I run this, we have to, and now it says a statement, so I'm going to say word with happy. And of course there is no word in that section, so nothing gets replaced. It's the same exact string. And that's pretty much it. The other way to do error checking is we want to make sure that for the word, we want, because it's a word, we want to say in here another do while. While first char dot length, to figure out if they actually typed in letters, is greater than 2. No, it's greater than 1, which means do you have more than one character? Because we don't want to do just one character. Now this same exact thing we need to do for the other line. However, instead of first char, we want second char. And there we go. So now when I run it, if I go 4, 2 it works. And then if I go H, it's going to ask again. So I'm going to go ha, 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 ha. Ha, ha, ha. Uh-oh. It doesn't work. Let's take a look at what happens. So I'm going to go Control-Shift-R to stop the red screen. And now what's happening is, if the length is greater than 1, it's going to ask again. What I want to say is if the length is less than 2. Which means if it's not a string, it's just a word of 0 characters or 1 character, please ask again. So now when I compile and run it, and realize how I figured out the error was running the program and seeing what the result would be. So I'm going to go 2, I'm going to go H, and now HA, and that worked. And I'm going to go ha ha, and there we go. Ha wasn't there. Actually, it was, but it was an uppercase H, which I didn't pick up on. For the error checking part of this program, for every time you ask a user for input, you need at least one error check for each input. I'll be happy with just one. You can do more, but you don't need to. Try not to do the rules that I did. If you saw that I did this, please do not do it yourself. But realize this is in the scanner example. This is not in the file read write. So it looks a little bit different. But this is the same exact code that you're going to use inside your function. It's not worded any differently. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask me. And that is pretty much it. Have a great one. See you later. Or maybe right meow.